Welcome back to the Daily Report and welcome to the Marketplace. Tonight, we're going to be discussing the eventualities of the finance bill. This is a very hot topic. It has caused a lot of protests, a lot of picketing, and in some cases, insurgents as well. In studio with me, I have Kiplimo Kigen, who is the head of policy research and advocacy at the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And I also have Mheshimiwa Honorable CPA Ruto Julius Kipleting, who is a member of the Finance Committee and also a member of Parliament, KESES. And we're just going to be taking a deep dive. We want to know how is this going to be affecting a lot of manufacturers and businesses. I'm aware that the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry has been pushing a few, clauses to be done away with. I believe around 77% have been done away with. So I'll start with you, Kigen. Is the KNCCI happy with some of the things that the Molo MP said yesterday?
Thank you so much, Ibak. Now, the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, we have over 2 million members, both directly and indirectly across the country. And as soon as the finance bill was released by Treasury, what we did is that we went to our members. We're in all the 47 counties, so we did go to the grassroots level to gather what these businesses think about the different clauses in the finance bill. And we collected that, and we appeared before the committee.
Right.
And I think it would be unfair for me to say that the committee did not listen to us.
Right.
They did listen to us, and we raised a number of issues across the many sectors.
Right.
And I can say that the items are now in 3 buckets.
Right.
Where one, we have the issues that the committee did agree and adopted. There are issues that the committee did not agree with our view as the voice of the private sector. And we have, thirdly, some issues that are in the bill that was tabled in Parliament that are actually having some grey areas that we would love for them to be cleared.
Right, and those grey areas hopefully will be cleared today. We have a certified public accountant and also a member of Parliament, KESES, which is, quite funny because I did school in KESES. Welcome to TV47. Now, maybe if you could just tell us, Mheshimiwa, what are some of the things that took place in the retreat that happened in Naivasha? We do know that maybe led to these clauses being, done away with. What happened there?
Thank you so much to appear today in your program that you're hosting. Apparently 4 years is not little enough not to consider you as one of the residents of KESES.
Well, I did grow up in Eldoret as well.
Back and just change your vote and vote for me. But anyway, thank you so much. It's a privilege to also tell Kenyans that Moi University is the university that produces such brilliant news anchors and host people like you. As my colleague here said, Finance Committee is one of the 49 committees that Parliament has formed. And the Finance and National Planning Committee is tasked with matters treasury. And of course, when you talk about matters national treasury, it's all issues around the budget making process and financing the budget, the same budget. Recently, the chair for budget and appropriation was here, Honorable Ndindi Nyoro. And I may not dive much to what he spoke to Kenyans, but critically what he spoke to Kenyans, that is the budget that is before the House now. The estimates have been discussed. It's awaiting now approval of appropriation bill immediately after the approval of the finance bill, which is the revenue side of the budget, or it's a supply side of the budget. You inquired what happened in our retreat. What happened in our retreat was to consider issues that was raised by members of public. As a procedure under Article 221, it is a requirement that the CS for National Treasury, the Cabinet for National Treasury and National Planning submits 2 months prior to the end of a financial year, a budget estimates together with the proposed revenue measures for the purpose of the Parliament to consider it, approve it as it is, or approve it with amendments. But prior to it, there are laid down procedures on how this is carried out. And one critical level of a procedure is public participation, which Parliament of Kenya and in the provisions and in compliance with the provisions of Article 1 of the Constitution and Article 10, where views, concerns, ideas of Kenyans is being put into consideration so that you have an highly engaged, discussed product that is for Kenyans. You make laws for Kenyans. And one of the law that is underway now is the finance bill of 2024.
Right.
Of course, we did the same in 2023.
Right.
And among the critical issues that National Treasury, of course, on behalf of the national government, are proposed in the context of financing the expenditure side of the budget, which came also with a lot of other demanding issues that arose, like one, the issues of confirmation of JSS teachers, which also ballooned the bill of education, the issues of confirmation and payment of interns on medical training, which is an issue which all of us you are aware, and many other issues, including proposed equal distribution of resources to electrify our constituencies, the entire 290 constituencies, which gave also a huge bill of around 18 billion, among other areas. So on the other side, Treasury also had to justify how is this going to be financed. So over and above the ordinary revenue measures which had already been factored in the 2023 Financial Act, was also other measures of focus to ensure that the changes in the budget estimates of the current financial year 2024-2025 is also addressed. Right. And I know your Kenya chairman was able to break down the components of budget estimates from ordinary revenue and what to be financed by debt, what to be financed by A&A. So what we went to do in Naivasha was now to look at a whole submissions, either physically, Chamber of Commerce is one, Kenya Union of Manufacturers is one, among many other entities and stakeholders who came. There were more than 300 that we sat down for 2 weeks to listen to them. And there were other written submissions of more than 1,000 that was staffed at a lot of work to analyze them, extrapolate them, draw matrix, and you're able to relate those that were related, get the different views, then summarize all of them and look at critical areas. Also, as people's representative, there were issues that were so touchy, issues to do with basic needs, like bread. Bread came out to be very critical in supporting of our working nation. I mean, the so-called Juakali sector, Muchengo people, that they rely on this bread to energize them to work. And it saves on the little sweat that they are going to earn for the purpose of household income and disposal for their household expenditure. So we looked at this one. The proposal was, yes,
Mheshimiwa, before we even delve into that, of course you said you deal with the financing and the supply side of the budget, and of course the finance bill has had a couple of clauses being scraped out. Exclusively here at TV47, we do have documents that show that the National Treasury is trying to rationalize the budget just in case the National Assembly does not pass the finance bill. We're seeing a few adjustments in, the funding to the executive offices, to State House, to security, a few changes with a, deferred confirmation of interns. What do you say about this?
Well, when you talk of the issues of fiscal consolidation, it's a two ways, vertical and it's horizontal. Vertical is when you look at the revenue side and look at the tax measures to ensure that, first of all, you reduce overdependence on debt, but rather finance your own budget by your own internal generated resources, and that is through ordinary revenue and taxes. The other issue is looking at the expenditure side. That is why also CS Treasury, during presentation of its budget highlights, did recommend even including holding hiring of new staff for 1 year. Those are horizontal issues, so that we're able to manage expenses.
Mheshimiwa, just to be clear, are we going to see an adjustment in the budget that was read by the Cabinet Secretary, Professor Njuguna Ndung'u, changing some of these, fiscal consolidation is very important?
Definitely.
Going to be changed?
Definitely. First of all, with the concessions that we made on the finance bill, remember the finance bill proposal came with the quantum figures. Or now it is seeking to increase the ordinary revenue. From the previous 2.6, which was in the last year, financial 23-24, to now 2.9 trillion, which is an increase of hoping more than 300 billion. So with the changes that saw elimination of some proposals, like the issues of diapers, sanitary towels, excise duty on imported raw materials of edible oil, all those put together culmination, any adjustment downward, it means it is going to reduce some figures. So, and that is the reason and the justification as to why appropriation bill comes after finance bill.
All right. Right.
Yes.
So there are changes.
There will be some changes, definitely, yes.
Are we going to be tightening our belts because a change in the budget means...
Definitely, Kenyans should prepare, state departments and ministries should prepare to live within their means.
All right.
Hibak, if you could just allow me to pose a question to Westimiwa. Currently, the budget, if you exempt the redemptions of debt, you have about 3.9 trillion. And then on the financing side, you have about an ordinary revenue of about 2.9 trillion.
Right.
So that's a deficit of about $1 trillion. Now, in the proposal that has been submitted to Parliament now, we have your committee retained the clause on infrastructure bonds.
Right.
That now, before they were tax exempt, now they will be charged 5% withholding tax for residents and 15% for non-residents. With the deficit that there is, one of the options of government is to cut expenses.
Right.
The second option is to borrow. Now, when you borrow, and we've seen a number of times that the government does tap into infrastructure bonds as a way to get money to finance government operations.
Right.
Why then is the committee going ahead to increase its own cost of financing? Because by putting the taxes on infrastructure bonds, what the market will do is that it will price in that taxes. So and it's a game of bids when it comes to infrastructure bonds.
And this will eventually, of course, register to the Mamamboga and the Boda person. These are the people who are going to be financing this budget. Has that been considered? Are there other ways that we could finance this budget?
Well, there are only two ways of financing the budget. You finance through taxes or through borrowing.
Right.
And as it is right now, maybe I need to invite, first of all, Kiplimo here.
Right.
I'm sure he must have looked at the entire budget expenditure side and appreciate that out of the 4 trillion budget, 1.3 trillion is consolidated fund services.
Right.
Purely money meant to redeem interest on the borrowings.
Right.
Domestic and but foreign. It's a huge burden. Even as we still think of maybe we would still reduce expectation on ordinary revenue and still look for spaces to borrow.
Right.
Already it is soiling. It is soiling that the only thing, an honorable thing, is to try as much as possible to reduce even for a given time. And that's why I agree with you when you say, would we expect a cut on? And when you talk over introduction of taxes on of course, what we've always seen, government tries to motivate the aspect of saying mopping resources through domestic borrowing to manage the short-term liquidity level or demand on meeting an obligation. But you see now, also government has to go back. Remember the other side of investment on security, shares, dividends, and all these other gains from investment on securities attracts a withholding tax. This is not a new thing. So that now the net has been opened as one way of ensuring that you widen the cap and the base and avoid or reduce over-dependence on the same tax base or a regime that focuses on the same level of income or a tax activity that end up also being duplicated. So it's a question of seeking to expand the base. And number two, if this is going to yield and reduce on borrowing, and the first target of reducing on borrowing is domestic borrowing. And that is why you see CBK had to change and lift a little bit the CPR rate. Reason is what? To invite external investors into our own security and try as much as possible to relieve. You see now what is happening? There is a huge competition of our commercial banks in Kenya, and they feel more secure in investing in government securities and denying the enterprise, private sector, an opportunity to borrow and expand.
Right, Mheshimiwa, before we, delve into the economics, and I'm seeing Kigan really wants to dive into that as well. Let's just clarify it for, the viewer who is at home. You're essentially saying, of course, that people should start tightening their belts because however we look at it, this debt, whatever we incur in our budgets is going to be paid by the Kenyans.
In any case, by law, it is a first charge.
Of course, Mheshimiwa. However, haven't you maybe or hasn't, the government thought about tightening the belt by reducing on some of the costs that are being incurred within the government? They say that we are budgeting for corruption. What's your stance on that? Couldn't we, lessen what we're using instead of just trying to finance what we have capped?
Whereas I would want to agree with the feelings of many Kenyans, and it's true, corruption is a cancer. it's a tone that we need to address. I mean, this is not an individual. Over time, it has grown into an attitude and a character of people. Today, a nice person, beautiful lady like you, given an opportunity to serve, the first thing to ask yourself is about yourself. Right. So we have turned slowly into a capitalistic nation more than the social aspect of growing together as a nation. Right. And it's an attitude that we need to address right from a personality point of view. Right. But nonetheless to say, of course, the other agencies that need to do their work, including Parliament, where I'm serving. Even today, when we were discussing about finance bill, it was getting to a point where you need even to ask your colleague, how then do we want to condemn a whole clear process by law that has to be done for the purpose of supporting the candidate to move forward on the apex and pretext of that there is corruption, which has been said every now and then. Right. And I remember, I don't know whether Kiblimo came in during the public participation on finance bill, and there was a time we were appreciating how much it is attracting the attentions of Kenyans when it is a matter that is touching on you as a person. Right. On the other side, we've been ignoring also a critical participation on the expenditure side so that we are able to assist each other. You see, now you helped us as Parliament by you coming in so much. It informed a lot on the outcome of our report. All right. Listen first, let me just complete. So that the issue you are raising about corruption, what I'm saying, this is a song that has been said, it is said, and up to now, nobody is able to take it a class and say, look at this budget estimate that is tabled in Parliament. Articles or certain program or certain itemized budget written this or with this code is not a priority or carries as suspicious kind of expenditure in it. The only time that you're able to see corruption is at the expenditure point of view.
Let me clarify it, and let me just point out a few things. State House gets 500 million, in the new changes. Executive Office of the President, 451 million. Some things that, of course, we can tighten on. But we go for a very short break. When we come back, I'll give Kigan, a moment to speak. And, of course, Mheshimiwa. We'll be right back.
Kila kiongozi ana hadithi yake ya kipekee.
Wazazi wangu walikuwa bit strict kwa sababu mamangu mwenyewe, mimi kutoka kuzaliwa sijailala nje.
The white small one, huyo ana sniff gunpowder na risasi na bomb. Alafu huyo mwingine ni Ridgeback ana sniff simba.
Even the employees knows that. So when in the boardroom is the chairman, the CEO, and the rest of.
At what point are you a wife?
The minute you get to that inside that door, you become now the wife.
Na kila maamuzi wanayoyafanya hufichua mengi kuhusu utu wao na uongozi wao.
We see God blessing us, and we now realize the power of giving also has to be rewarded back.
Kupitia kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi, tunakuletea mahojiano ya kusisimua na uchambuzi wa kina kuhusu viongozi wetu.
Pick your core business as the bigger stones. Put them in your diary first. Give priority the bigger things.
Usikose kila Alhamis saa 1:30 jioni.
In a world where challenges are as common as opportunities, there are those who dare to defy the odds. They are the entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship isn't just about starting a business. It's about embracing uncertainty, pushing boundaries, and turning dreams into reality.
Hata ambao ni pesa ya kusave, wallahi. Ambao mwaka ni pesa nyingi sana.
As long as you're earning something, there's always that opportunity to save. And you start with where you are.
The way we run the business is in a very unforgiving way, where every team member has to bring out their best.
So, to all the dreamers, innovators, and risk takers out there, remember, being an entrepreneur isn't just a job, it's a way of life. Join the journey. Become an entrepreneur. The Grind, Mondays at 7:30 p.m.
Welcome back to the marketplace. We are talking about the finance bill. We're engaging with members of parliament and of course the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. But we need to touch ground on what is happening. There have been demos not just today but yesterday as well. Let's take a look at that.
Kwa public participation tunashukuru kwamba kwa sheria kwamba ni wamejaribu kabisa kama serikali ya county, kama serikali ya kitaifa, wamejaribu sana kuleta public participation. Lakini ukiangalia sana ni kama maoni yote hayatiliwi manane. Lakini kwa wamejaribu kwa sababu kama wiki 2-3 zilizopita tumekuwa na public participation hapa Kericho. At least kulikuwa na ilikuwa imeenezwa kabisa vizuri, ingawa waliweka kwa gazeti. Tunataka ni future waweke kwa maredio yetu ya kinyumbani.
Kuhusiana na hii mambo ya public participation, kiukweli kabisa unapata ile watu fulani, kitengo fulani, watu fulani wanaitwa ili wakuwe kama ile for formalities. Ndio maana tunasisitisha kuwa hii public participation juu inaitwa public, haijaitwa forum mama nini, ingefaa ije kiwanja ndio kila mtu maono ya kila mwana Kenya na ipatikane.
When you see a government that is so arrogant and does not care about the small person, motor vehicle tax, bread levy, all those vehicle tax nonsenses. Wametoa kweli, lakini hiyo ndio kitu wamezoea.
Can eliminate the clauses, we should also look at expenditure. How can we say we are increasing expenditure in the executive, but cutting expenditure for national health for all the citizens? One man's office gets a bump in allocation of finances, and healthcare for all citizens is slashed. Education for all citizens is slashed to fund offices of very few people. So the finance bill that tells us how we are going to finance a budget that is extorting the citizens to keep.
Majority of you have become presidential puppets. We are not going to address the issues that the ordinary mwananchi elected you to go and do. You are going to serve the interest of the president and the administration. This is what we want to tell you. You have increased taxation in almost everything. In the recent days, tunasikia mpaka muongeza taxation ya kununua diapers za watoto. Like it has reached to an extent, you have gone to an extent of even taxing the unborn. Hatutakubali, and that's why tumeamua kama vijana. That's why tumeamua kama vijana. We shall demonstrate from now until when our voices will be heard, because we have tried expressing this matter in a peaceful manner. That's why we must remain in the streets.
All right, of course, there is two aspects that are coming out there. Mashinani are saying that public participation to some degree was successful and to some degree wasn't. And we're also seeing a majority of the youth who are protesting here in Nairobi and in Mombasa as well, saying that they do not see the changes that have been proposed for this particular very contentious bill. I'll come to you, Keegan. When it comes to public participation, you've said that the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry was given a platform to speak. Do you believe that the exercise was free and fair? And do you think, because one of the people who was speaking said that this is an arrogant government, do you believe that?
Hibak, just before I go into that question, I would like to mention an item that Mheshimiwa mentioned here,
right,
about banks and the infrastructure bonds. Banks, like any other business, they have an obligation to their shareholders. And this is a business opportunity, and they take it up. So it is, the onus is upon the government to control their appetite for infrastructure bonds, not the banks. Hibak, three quick issues. First is the motor vehicle tax.
Yes.
If you look at the proposals that have been tabled in Parliament, the motor vehicle tax has been taken out. And we actually appreciate that it was taken out. But then the private sector is dissatisfied because even as much as the motor vehicle tax has been taken out,
right,
the road development levy, road maintenance levy,
yes,
has been increased from 18 shillings per litre to 25 shillings.
With 7 shillings.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Now, Mheshimiwa talked about
I should call upon you first of all not to mislead the viewers.
Mheshimiwa, just allow me to finish.
Bill, it's only 65 clauses. And there is no any clause that
just allow me to finish. This is the document.
This
is the document that was actually.
It's not in the clause.
This is the document that was actually tabled in Parliament.
Right.
Now, talking about the expansion of the tax bracket, this is actually deepening, not expansion, because when you increase the RML, what happens is that the consumption of fuel is going to go down. And there's evidence for this. So if you look at 2020, 2021, and 2022 and 2023, you find that the import of crude oil in Kenya has actually been going down.
Right.
From 6.4% in 2021 to 5.4% and then 4.3% in 2023. So, and if you look at the back end of this, you find the introduction of 8% VAT on fuel, 16% VAT on fuel. So there's actually evidence to demonstrate that when you increase taxes on fuel, there's actually going to be low consumption. Mind you, the number of vehicles on our roads are increasing every year, but then consumption is going down. And if you look at currently the taxes that are charged on fuel, it's about 76% of the landed cost. So when you increase 7 more shillings, you're making it even worse. To the second item, this is an item on e-teams. And we did issue a statement that the proposal of up to 2 million a month penalty on non-compliance with e-teams is actually too punitive. And the committee agreed with us. Now, the challenge is that, and if you read that particular clause, the committee responding to our comment, the committee mentions that the penalty is punitive and it should be commensurate to the charge here. Now, it does not specify what then that penalty should be. It leaves a gray area, and we would like for that to be addressed. And the reason for that is that one of my members, who is actually in export, and they do meat and meat processing, when e-teams was introduced, they have lost 40% of their suppliers.
Right.
And why is that? It's because the farmer, the smallholder farmer at the local level, they haven't understood e-teams correctly. So what they do is that they say, I can't supply to you because you require me to comply with e-teams. I'm better off supplying to a local broker around here because they won't require me to sign up on e-teams, even though I might lose a little bit on the premium or on the pricing. So that says that capacity building needs to be done on e-teams. Right. So we would like for Parliament to really make the line clear on the issue of e-teams.
Right. And
finally, just before one more item, Mheshimiwa, before you respond, is the item on IDF, import declaration fee. The proposal in the bill was that to move this from 2.5% to 3%.
Right.
Now, our proposal was to delete that clause and maintain it at 2.5%. Now, one thing that we appreciate about the committee here is that they have tried to focus on manufacturing with what they've tabled in Parliament. Right. You see that eco levy will now be charged only on imports. You see that the VAT on EVs will only be charged on those that are imported. Now, our proposal was that if we could have IDF, the import declaration fee, lower it for raw materials.
Right.
And then for finished products, you can increase that because in the same breath of promoting local manufacturing. And let me give you an example just to put things into context.
Right.
Right now we're having, there's a challenge in the macadamia sector where you find that a lot of, we lifted the ban on export of raw macadamia, that is in-shell macadamia. And a lot of it is going to China. And with the Chinese government, you get a 5% rebate on the value of the products when you import a raw material, this macadamia, because they understand that you're importing a raw material, you're going to process it, you're going to create jobs. So we would appreciate if this particular item on IDF becomes consistent with improving manufacturing from 7.2% to the government's commitment of 15% by 2027.
All right, and that's coming from an advocate, our very learned friend. I understand that, of course, you are...
I just need to pick some few things, not to respond exactly to everything. First of all, starting with e-teams, I think I want to appreciate the view from Kenya's manufacturers. It was a challenge, especially to the small scale, the small scale, the suppliers from Mboga, avocado farmers, those who are doing 1 or 2 trees in their farms. And when the traders, this is exporter, would want to say, you see, for me to claim my taxes, you see, e-teams generally is about automation of our tax system, which is a welcome move. It is not only Kenyan issue, it is a world standards now, where you are using the technology available to simplify the tax process at the point of your purchase. The receipt that is being raised, that is captured with PIN, will be reflected at the point of paying taxes. Even it lessens your work of preparing your tax account for VAT purpose. But then in this particular proposal, we have proposed to reduce any value, any volume of less than $1 million will not be required. But there's something called a reverse invoicing that will be utilized for the purpose of the trader. So I think that one is sorted out for our farmers. The issues on RMLF, I still want again to state categorically, of the clauses and the finance bill proposal, it carries only 65 clauses, and there is nowhere fuel levies mentioned. On this issue of IDF.
But it was a proposal by the cabinet.
The CS for treasury, for roads, has come in with a proposal.
Is it being considered, Mheshimiwa?
But you see now, this one is not a factor of a finance bill.
Right, but you have said that there are changes we're looking at.
The CS.
Is his suggestion going to be taken up?
For now, it's not a discussion because...
Is it going to be taken up, Mheshimiwa?
I'm asking to you, for now, it is because it is still, it will be subjected to the Committee of Transport. By the time it will come to the House, it will be another issue.
Right.
Yeah, so it is still a process. It is yet to come.
But there is a possibility.
But you see, and the reason why CS came in, maybe I just need to pick some few things that CS put up.
Right.
Kenya now, you remember for the last around 5 years or 10 years, Kenya started the issues of low volume roads under KERA. You see, KERA has only been doing what you call withered roads and maintaining withered roads. But for time, you realize the money that goes there every year under 22%, 10%, or CS allocation, or special allocation, intervention of these roads, it is taking a lot of money. So Kenya opted a policy of saying gradually we can convert this particular value-adding roads, like the one going to farmers, agriculture, into a low volume by tarmacking, preparing the road, hardening it, and then covering with a low volume of tarmac. But then the problem came in when they wither out because it's a low volume of maintenance. So they are coming with a good proposal of saying, look at this, we need to maintain the same roads. And unlike Kenya and Kura, where they have divine resources to maintain their roads, KERA was only looking at the issues of withered roads. So it is an issue, it's a good idea, but now when that time comes in, we need to discuss in.
So it is a good idea.
It's a good idea because look at those roads. The roads have gone down now, and it's none of anybody's responsibility to prepare. You ask a KERA, they don't have resources. You understand? But and you see, these roads are very valuable, and I'm sure Kenya Association of
but you just
Chamber of Commerce,
76% of taxes.
Of taxes, landed cost of fuel.
You see, the cost of fuel is variable. It's not only looking at this, like now IDF, and I want to dwell on this IDF. IDF was reduced in the finance year 2023 to 2.5 from 3.5, expecting that it might encourage the volume to change. You know the outcome? There was a drop in the revenues by 10 billion, meaning the consumption of fuel is almost static, that even any variable is not, it cannot directly influence the outcome of it. And therefore now, as we are seeking to promote local manufacturing, look at, I started by saying, the tax measures which have been proposed, it came with a quantum figures on how it's targeting. So we gave a concession to allow local manufacturing, to support our local investors, to support even foreign investors to come and invest in Kenya and produce in Kenya and create employment in Kenya and support this GNC group. Look at this GNC group. It is lack of employment.
This is a dream, of course, that you have, Mheshimiwa, but of course the advocate is trying to know.
We cannot look at this, I don't know, let me remember this. We cannot remain to be a procrastinating nation forever. For how long are we going to remain in this situation where we are a trading nation for the other countries? They are setting up their factories in their own countries because they know there is market in Kenya for consumers. How long are we going to remain to be consumers? It must take a point and a person to make a decision gradually, and of course it calls on all of us to come together. There is a point of sacrifice from taxpayer.
Mheshimiwa, as consumers speak about this, we have manufacturers here who you say,
and that is why
these policies are for manufacturers.
Looking at their proposed looking at their proposals, no, if you listen to their proposals,
I think first it is unfair for Mheshimiwa to say that we should have more increased taxes on fuel, because as it currently sits, 76% taxes to the value of landed cost. So there's no way, there's obviously no room to increase that. And as I demonstrated earlier, the imports, the consumption of fuel has been going down over the years, and it's probably going to go down if that proposal goes through. Now, the issue with IDF here is, at the Chamber of Commerce, we do a lot of trade missions, going out there to different countries, both in Africa and outside Africa, looking for market opportunities for our members. And we come across investors. And one of the issues that investors have complained a lot is the uncertainty of our tax regime.
Right.
Mheshimiwa mentioned that IDF was reduced from 3.5% to 2.5%.
Right.
Since 2016, IDF has been dancing between 1.5% to 3.5%.
Right.
I have met investors and I had looked at their investing models, and some are playing with an IDF rate of 5% just to be safe, because they just can't tell where the government will put the IDF.
Right.
And Mheshimiwa talked about manufacturing.
It's called tax
planning.
I need to help you that. It's called tax planning.
Why don't we allow a discount on IDF for raw materials that are coming in, and then even increase for finished products? Because that way, when raw materials come in, people are able to create jobs and process.
I need to remind
that is
you,
not reflected
exercisable tax on raw materials that are meant for production now has been removed. For your information.
That is true, but on this particular IDF,
that is an incentive to say, look at this, because we are sensitive to the fact that we are suffering for lack of employment in Kenya. And one of the cause to create and improve on our employment capacity is by ensuring manufacturing and industrialization comes back. And that is why the huge proposed excise duty that had been proposed as a committee, cognizant that we must grow as a country. We cannot only look at reducing the cost of what we directly need to consume, even importations, reduce the cost of what we import, and cause and competitive environment for our local production.
Yes. However, the manufacturers are saying whatever policies you're talking about is not working. Whatever you're trying to push is not working. Things are still expensive. We're not seeing a difference. That is what you should be considering.
Look at this. Even the proposals are yet to be approved. We are still even in discussion.
But the proposals in and of themselves are being denied by manufacturers.
Sometimes we need to speak to the wrong attitude that we have developed, that we have to cast aspersion in everything. Like people were saying the other week, we don't trust the parliament what it's doing. Look at what the committee has brought. Look at what the committee has brought, what is in the flow of the House. So parliament is an independent parliament, it's a listening parliament, it listens to the cries of the people, and that is why a huge cut on what Treasury was expecting to be adopted by parliament to suit what they had provided for in expenditure has been effected in line with the proportion of the people of Kenya.
Right.
But
and
going back to this idea,
I have a question for
Mheshimiwa. Let the advocate speak.
I have a question for Mheshimiwa. Mheshimiwa, and this is a little bit beyond the finance bill. Just looking at the predictability and the uncertainty of our tax regime. Do we need to have, and you're a CPA, you understand these matters very well, do we need to have a finance bill every year? Because the challenge that it poses is that investors shy off because they just don't know. A new tax might come in and disrupt your business, or worse yet, run you out of business.
Yes, we need to
need to have a finance bill every year?
To Article 221 of the Constitution.
Because it's an amendment, by the way.
No, first of all, in the Constitution, it provides that there is no budget expenditure that will be tabled without the revenue side in it.
Right, gentlemen, a little bit of reprieve. Things have gotten so heated, right, within this studio, and I feel like we need a moment to just breathe and, remember why we're even talking about this in the first place. The main beneficiary of all of this is, of course, the common mwananchi, and we're going to be looking at a few things that have been proposed, and a few things that have been cut from this particular finance bill, a very contentious bill, of course. And as we consider some things, of course, there are some things that have been cut. For example, the 16% VAT on bread, excise duty on edible oil, VAT on transportation of sugar has been removed, 2.5% motor vehicle tax has been dropped, the eco-levy on locally manufactured goods have been removed, ETIMS has been receded for MSMEs who have a turnover below 1 million shillings, excise duty imposed on imported table eggs, onions and potatoes to, of course, help local manufacturers and, of course, some of the people who are producing it within the country. And there's no increase in mobile money transfer. VAT on financial services, foreign exchange transactions have also been removed. And as we continue to see, of course, what remains is that there is going to be the digital marketplace tax on ride-hailing services, food delivery services, freelance services, professional services, rental services, and tax-based services, and any other service that is not exempt from tax under this act. And this, of course, is anything that is being traded on the digital space. And as we continue to see what is happening, the investment and promotion levy on goods has also remained, and this is on import declaration from 2.5% to 3%. Advocate, you were talking about this, of course, before we started looking at these numbers. This is something that you are against, right? And of course, there is the subject to investment and promotion levy, clinker and cement, 10%. What do you say about this?
On the issue of IDF, our position is very clear. Let's reduce IDF for raw materials and let IDF on finished product. There's no problem with that, because we want to create jobs, and I believe that is what the government does. And just to clarify, Hibak, as the private sector, we want to see the government do well. Because if the government does well, then the citizenry do well, and obviously if the government is one of the biggest buyers for the private sector. So we want the government to do well, and we also, when our government does well, our economy does well, then we get the opportunity to indeed sell our products. But even at that, we would like for the government to be consistent with the aspirations that they have. The aspiration of increasing manufacturing to 20%, 30% by 2030 should also be in tandem. And the government has put up some policies, particularly on the excise for manufacturing in this finance bill. But then on the IDF, we definitely do that. But even zooming out, the predictability of our tax regime is a very big concern. If you look at the committee has done away with the proposal to increase excise from 15 to 20% for money transfers, as you've mentioned. There is data, telephone, internet, and betting and gambling. Betting and gambling is one of the sectors that has had a lot of issues with taxation. Now, the concern, if you speak to players in betting and gambling, whom this year alone, 20 have closed so far, is that yes, it has been maintained at 15%, but they just don't know in the next finance bill what will happen. So we need some predictability there and certainty.
And CPA, you did say that it's still open for a lot of changes. What do you say to that?
Well, now, after tomorrow's parliament time, which has been allowed for discussion, we will cross over now to a very crucial stage. What we call third reading committee stage. At those stages, members will be free. I'm sure maybe even my colleague might have also got another member and bring up the issue in a level that it can also be discussed along in the floor of the House. But let us not forget the intention and purpose of finance bill is to focus on two major issues. One is revenue raising. That again, let's not forget that it's a responsibility of the government again to spend, to give services. So sometimes we might cry and wail, remove this. On the other side of the budget, we're also asking, we need this. I saw in the news, the 9 news that you are presenting, I saw some is it clinical CEOs are striking, saying, pay us now. They need money, and this money has to be obtained from somewhere. I saw a lot of items that Committee of Finance have recommended as you listed. In fact, the list was so long. I was expecting my colleague in Chamber of Commerce to say, for the first time, but they need everything. And they're not providing even, and remember when we were concluding our discussion saying we need also to arrive at balance. And you gave us good underwriting statement. Let's try to arrive at a balance. Because we understand we are not only going to be also a committee that is going to be reactive to everything and fail to know that we have an obligation also to firm up support of funding the budget. Now, the issue that I need to bring across. Lastly, because it is. Lastly on that, so that the issues of zero rating of our items, goods and commodities, like bread. You see, this is an issue that is so basic. It touches on people. But there is something that I need to bring across to Kenyans. When we talk of a zero rated item, like we are zero rating VAT on bread or any other thing that is zero rated or exempted, do you know on the other side, you are telling the government that get our money from taxes and compensate the manufacturer. Wakili will tell you that manufacturer of bread, every month, every expenditure they incur, tax on that expenditure, they have to file and request for refund from the exchequer. I don't know whether we are aware on that. So it's like the government is taking money that ought to have been spent somewhere else it is doing what you call an opportunity cost, sacrificing certain critical expenditure to come and compensate the manufacturer for the purpose of that rate to come down.
All right. Now I'm going to
So it is not a free thing.
Of course.
Yes.
Mheshimiwa, I'm going to give Keegan a minute to just give his closing remarks because I understand that we've already overrun our time. Keegan.
Two very quick things. One, let's expand the tax bracket, not deepen. And how can we do that? There are so many businesses in the informal sector who are actually not in the tax bracket. It's about formalizing the informal sector, and the use of incentives to do that has been demonstrated across the world to have success. Rwanda, they had their version of e-teams, which had great success, more than 50% registration, as opposed to Kenya's, which was only 20%.
Right.
They gave a 10% tax discount on VAT if you sign up on e-teams.
Right.
So that is the way to bring in the informal sector.
Right.
Secondly and finally, we understand that our debt obligations are huge. And I had PS Treasury talk about for every 10 shillings that it collected, about 6-7 shillings goes into payment of debt.
Right.
But even as we focus on that and focusing on the revenue side, how we raise revenue, we have to, let us not be blind on the impact and potential impact that these proposals might have on our economy. Because yes, we have the debt obligations, no one can deny that, but then the consequences.
All right, that concludes our conversation here tonight. Thank you so much for joining us on the marketplace. Well, I have been threatened. We are concluding on that note. Thank you so much. Just a minute then. Just conclude.
Ask them. Try as much as possible to understand the content of this bill before you wrap up or protest on something that even we still need knowledge to understand it. I want to encourage you, hack you from the point of knowledge, but we welcome you. It is time also we appreciate Kenyans are now rising and they are cognizant of their role to participate in decision making.
All right, I am a Gen Z as well. And that is how we conclude this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us here on The Marketplace. Until next week, same time, same place. Thank you so much. Have yourselves a very lovely night. My name is Hibak Said.